Sarah Palin decided, hey, you know what? No, I'm going to interpret it as referring to Willow Palin, who's 14. And I'm going to say that David Letterman was encouraging statutory rape. So then it gets ugly. Palin responds, Letterman responds. Now, finally, Palin goes on the Today Show with Matt Lauer, and they're going to get one more round at it. Let's go to clip number 6 to see how this, what the latest twists on this are.
Can we talk about some of the other ways you've been in the news lately, and you know about this? There's been this feud this week with Late Show host David.
We must.
No, I know, but there's been a feud this week with David Letterman over some comments he made about your family, some jokes about your daughter in particular. I'm just curious, how did you hear about the comments and the jokes? Were you watching, or did someone tell you about them?
No, the next day I had an interview with John Ziegler on his new radio show, and he asked me about a comment that Letterman had made regarding my appearance as a slutty flight attendant. And my first thought was, hey, don't disparage flight attendants. They work hard. We love them. You know, how condemning of them. Don't say such a thing. And then I found out later that the comment that was made about statutory rape of my 14-year-old daughter, Willow, knowing that crossed the line, and then others chiming in on other comments that Letterman has made. Just, you know, quite I think, a sad commentary on where we are as a culture, as a society, to chuckle and laugh through comments such as he had made the other night. I think it's quite unfortunate.
Since David Letterman's not here, let me just say that he did not mention Willow by name, and he then went on to say he was not referring to your 14-year-old daughter. I do want to read this statement that you released. Go ahead.
Okay, Matt, I would say that you and anybody else are extremely naive to believe that very convenient excuse of David Letterman's the other day. It took a couple of days for him to think of that excuse that, no, he wasn't talking about my daughter who was there with me at the game, the 14-year-old. He was talking about some other daughter. Well, I think that's a weak excuse. And you know, regardless, it was a degrading comment about a young woman. And I would hope that people really start really rising up and deciding it's not acceptable. No wonder young girls especially have such low self-esteem in America when we think that it's funny for a so-called comedian to get away with being able to make such a remark as he did.
You issued a statement.
That's acceptable.
Governor, at the end of your statement, you said that a joke like this contributes to the atrociously high rate of sexual exploitation of minors by older men who use and abuse others. Now, it was a joke. It was probably by most standards in bad taste, but can you really connect the dots to criminal activity the way you did in that statement?
I connect the dots to a degrading statement made about young women, and that does contribute to some acceptance of abuse of young women.
All right, first, let me start on the small stuff. Come on, doesn't she look like a flight attendant? I mean, the whole time I'm looking at her, it's screaming flight attendant. All right, that's incredibly minor. Now, the second thing that got under my skin, this so-called comedian. How long does the guy have to be a comedian before you lift the so-called part? I mean, David Letterman's been around for 30 years. This so-called comedian. All right, now to the real stuff. It contributes to girls with low self-esteem and to some acceptance of abuse of young women. All right, let's review the jokes. Hey, you know, Sarah Palin is in with her daughter in town. Don't tell Elliot Spitzer. That's the essence of joke number 1. So that's a joke about Elliot Spitzer, that he would hit on young women. So do we listen to that joke and go, you know what, I think I'm going to accept abuse of younger women more? Okay, or do we go, you know, you're a young woman, you listen to that, you go, oh yeah, Elliot Spitzer's a creep who goes after younger women. You know what, I'm going to have low self-esteem. I just don't understand how it's connected. The second joke was they go to the Yankees game and A-Rod knocks up the daughter during the 7th inning stretch. Okay, that's because the daughter has been knocked up, as Letterman pointed out, and A-Rod being A-Rod and dating everybody under the sun. Apparently he's dating Kate Hudson lately, just a little FYI. Anyway, again, how does that lead to some girl watching out there going, oh, I have such low self-esteem? Because what if A-Rod knocked me up in the 7th inning? I don't get it, okay? So I think it's absolutely absurd, and I think she's angry that she got called a slutty flight attendant, and she's trying to cover it in 800 different ways, and this constant mention of statutory rape is ridiculous. And now Sarah Palin is about to take it over the top. Now we get into a discussion of Willow, her 14-year-old daughter. Here she is with Matt Lauer on the Today Show.
When you were asked if you might appear on David Letterman's show to hash all this out, your spokesperson issued a statement and said the Palins have no intention of providing a ratings boost for David Letterman by appearing on his show. Plus, it would be wise to keep Willow away from David Letterman. I'd like you to explain what that meant. Are you suggesting that David Letterman can't be trusted around a 14-year-old girl?
Hey, take it however you want to take it. It is a comment that came from the heart that Willow, no doubt, would want to stay away from David Letterman after he made such a comment, and you can interpret that however you want to interpret it.
Well, but is that not perhaps in bad taste also, Governor, if you're suggesting that a 62-year-old man couldn't be trusted?
It's not in bad taste. Hey, maybe he couldn't be trusted because Willow's had enough of this type of comments, and maybe Willow would want to react to him in a way that maybe would catch him off guard. That's one way to interpret such a comment.
He's tried to explain this. Does he owe you an apology?
Here's the problem, Matt. The double standard that has been applied here. One, let's talk politically, the double standard. First, remember in the campaign, Barack Obama said, family's off limits. You don't talk about my family. And the candidate who must be obeyed, everybody adhered to that, and they did leave his family alone. They haven't done that on the other side of the ticket, and it has continued to this day. So that's a political double standard. But here again, the double standard when it comes to acceptance of a celebrity being able to get away with a disparaging comment that does erode a young girl's self-esteem and does contribute to some of the problems that we have in society. This so-called humor, I don't find it humorous. I think a lot of Americans don't think that it's.
And I would agree with that. And I'm not sure that you can be so easy to say that he's gotten away with it. I think he will pay some sort of a price for this, Governor, because I do think a lot of people feel the joke was an extremely bad taste, no matter which daughter of yours he was referring to. Does he owe you an apology as opposed to just the explanation he's issued?
He doesn't have to apologize to me. I would like to see him apologize to young women across the country for contributing to that kind of that thread that is throughout our culture that makes it sound like it's okay to talk about young girls in that way, where it's kind of okay, accepted, and funny to talk about statutory rape. It's not cool, it's not funny.
Enough with the statutory rape. I mean, that was nowhere near what Letterman was saying. Look, first she says, look, interpret it any way you like about my statement about Letterman being a creepmeister who might hit on my 14-year-old daughter. Okay, that's more over the top than anything Letterman said, only by a mile, right? And then she says, well, you never know. Maybe Willow will kick his ass. I mean, that's what she was saying, right? Or maybe you don't want Willow anywhere near Letterman. Kick him in the nuts. Let's see how that serves him, right? And then, look, here's the thing. She would have had people on her side, and maybe even me on her side, if she said, look, the kid's got to be off limits. Whether you think it's an appropriate joke or an inappropriate joke, you didn't joke about Obama's kids. Don't joke about my kids. She wouldn't have lost me there, okay? Now, Bristol's 18, etc. And do you get why those jokes happen? Because you preached abstinence, and then your daughter got knocked up. You see how the hypocrisy leads to, hey, maybe that's worth a joke, right? And it's a joke. It's not a joke about statutory rape of your younger daughter. And then when you bring that in, you make it 1,000 times creepier. And you make it disturbing. I think she's making it a lot worse. Now, since she's brought in statutory rape 100 times and it's totally uncalled for, if I was David Letterman at this point, I'd come out with a statement saying, Sarah Palin can kiss my ass. Not on the left side, not on the right side, but right in the middle. Okay? Not interested in your BS about how low self-esteem, etc. By the way, Now has joined Sarah Palin, the National Organization of Women, saying they condemn the so-called comedian David Letterman. What am I going to do with people?